Hi guys, before we begin the episode, I want to tell you about an amazing website that could help you get your health back. I know that sounds like a big statement to make, and I know a lot of you out there have been concerned about your health, especially with this COVID jab, with the toxicity in there, with the shedding of the COVID vaccine. All of us are concerned. We're seeing people fall ill, die prematurely, and it's really gotten bad. There's a website that could change your life and potentially even save your life. I'm not going to talk too much about it. Just please go on there, watch the videos, sign up to watch the videos, and learn how you could get your health back to the way it was prior to COVID and even better. All right, we are here with the America Happens Network, and I'm so proud to have two of the most incredible freedom fighters here. We got Tina Peters here. How you doing, Tina?
Hey, good, Vem. Thank you.
Much respect to you. Much love to you.
Appreciate you so
amazing
much.
To have you on the America Happens Network, Ivan.
What's happening, Vem?
With these deep state marauders.
¿Qué hubole? ¿Qué órale, pues?
Dude, this deep state marauders.
¿Qué onda, manito?
Bro, are you gonna do a comic book? Or this sounds like superhero type stuff. Deep State Marauders sounds like X-Men, Batman type stuff.
Well,
I'm serious, bro. You gotta make yours like there's gotta be a comic version.
Since I used to be a professor at the Defense Intelligence Agency up the road, some people mistake me for Professor X.
Professor X, yeah.
You know why? Look at that.
No, but I'm very serious, man. You got to graphic novelize that thing, dude. And you know what? Your office, you know what I would say?
Absolutely.
You could do this stuff with AI really well, by the way. Seriously, I'm not kidding. If you create a superhero called the Deep State Marauder, and this is all fiction. We're allowed to have fiction.
I'm already there.
Yeah, and the Deep State Marauder, what does he do? He's like a Punisher type.
Yeah.
That kind of
punishes the deep state by name.
There you go. One by one. You know
I'm
how
the congressional disinfectant.
There you go. There you go. I like this, man. I really do. I think
Seriously.
if you make a graphic novel, that could be a best-selling graphic novel. And Tina Peters, Wonder Woman over here. Wonder Woman.
You know, we're calling them out, aren't we, Ivan?
This is really awesome. So yesterday we did an hour-long interview with Ivan, which you're going to see as a precursor to this. And now we have Tina Peters and Ivan because the story continues from there. Who wants to start? Who wants to have the mic?
Ladies first.
Ladies first. It's always, and this lady is definitely first. This is like top-notch lady over here.
Well, watch out, Deep State. We're after you. So, you know about my trial, right? So we were ready to go to trial. Everything was happening, and just had a break with my legal defense. It just wasn't going forward like it should have been, and so now the trial is set for the 29th of July through August 12th. So everybody come out and see me go on tinapeters.us. But, more and more things are coming out. I mean, Ivan's going to share some things with you. I know he's already shared some things with you, Vem. More and more is coming out, and I think we've got them on their heels. What do you think, Ivan?
Let's talk about it.
From your mouth to God's ears. This is pretty amazing. So, Ivan, you want to tell us what's going on? You want to start the story, or?
Yeah, let's recap from yesterday. I basically stepped you through from 2014. The censorship industrial complex started by conducting coups overseas, and then it faced inward against us, specifically ramping things up in 2018. But then as we moved into 2020, that's when things really got spicy. We talked about Brian Otten over at the Foreign Influence Task Force, who used to be the Crossfire Hurricane senior intel analyst. We talked about Jim Baker, who used to be the general counsel over at the FBI, and then went over to the Twitter 1.0 to be an attorney there, right, to coordinate the censorship regime. Meanwhile, the San Francisco field office of the FBI was the conduit between headquarters and the Twitter and big tech, in the names of Joe Pientka III, who was on Crossfire Hurricane as well, and his little surrogate buddy, Elvis Chan. They continued with that regime, and what did they do? They basically coordinated with their buddies over at the CIA, and here's how it worked. Okay? Remember back in 2016 when John Brennan was the CIA director and Gina Haspel was the chief of station in the London office, and George Papadopoulos somehow got bumped by very gorgeous women in order to talk about stuff, right? And I won't go into the details on that. Read his book, Deep State Target. Goes into a lot of those details.
Are you talking about honey trap type stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So anyway, a lot of those links are there. But let's just go back to the CIA can't conduct operations domestically, but how they do it is that they task or request, if you will, in an informal/formal way. Hey, London. Hey, MI6. Hey, Australian services.
This is mind blowing because we've had a couple of people that actually said anytime they need to get somebody, offed or something crazy to happen, it all happens because of the outside jurisdiction, and hence, and therefore, they get away with it. They employ the MI6. Amazing.
So when they had to be like, wait, if Trump secures a second term, it's going to be really bad for us because they're going to bring in the deep state marauder. That'll become the Secretary of Retribution. They're going to bring in General Flynn, that is going to spearhead the effort for maximal retribution, right? Imagine that, right? And then what about, the 51 that provided cover for the Biden laptop, the 39 that unmasked Flynn, all the impeachment hoaxes, right? Everything, the spying, the Crossfire Hurricane, the Mueller team, all of it's a complete hoax, predicated on the original transgression, which was the Russia play, which was completely false, right? So we go into 2020. Trump is getting 50 to 100,000 people at his rallies, right? And Biden's he's losing the primary in Iowa. He's losing the primary in New Hampshire. So then Jim Clyburn, who's been in office over here in Congress from South Carolina for 50 years or so, right? They decide, the DNC, let's pay off all the other candidates so that we can rally behind Biden so that there's immunity for the Biden criminal syndicate in the form of the residency. And the way we fund it partially is through China and through Ukraine, right? We talked about the 10% for the big guy strategy, right? I mean, this is all out there. Tony Bobulinski, all these witnesses, that oversight committee Jim Comer is talking about. So what do? They resort to having 39 states change the way they run elections, and they say, due to the pandemic emergency, we're going to violate the Constitution and the laws of the states. I believe Colorado was one of the 39 states that changed the way they conducted elections, but it wasn't legally done. It's the state legislature that can determine how to allocate their presidential and vice presidential electors, but instead non-legislative actors did so. Not just the 6 contested states or the 7 that sent quote-unquote alternate slates of electors. It was 39. Add to that Georgia, which did a consent decree. That's another mechanism that made the election unlawful. So you literally have at a minimum 40 of the 50 states running their elections fraudulently, which means we do not have a legitimately elected president in the White House, let alone resident.
The people that are fighting for it get persecuted.
That's right. And so, I have a 4-session interview with Ivan that you can see on my website, and on 5 hours we did. I mean, this guy is just, he's got them all. He's got them all tagged. But that's the thing. I mean, this thing about ballot voting early, all this. I know what happens between the time the election starts and the election is certified. They wouldn't let us, as the elected clerk, in there looking at what they were doing to inflate, vote for people, all these things going on. And of course, Jenna Griswold in Dominion and the vendor, let me just say the vendor, one of the vendors that's involved in all this election fraud, I'm just going to say it, is because we have 3 reports that prove it. And people can look at it on tinapeters.us. But here's the thing, is they don't want the people to know. And so what they're doing by implementing all these people that Ivan's talking about is to try to cloud the issue and try to deflect from it. So Jenna Griswold, I mean, did you know that my opponent for the Secretary of State race was Pam Anderson, the head of CTCL, that Mark Zuckerberg funneled all that money through, and her mother-in-law is the one that was trying to keep Trump off the ballot in Colorado. So these are organized people. It's an incestuous, you're exactly right. So what's happening in Colorado is happening all across the United States. And you're right at the belly of this beast, Ivan.
It seems like they have these people that are extremely corrupt, that are willing to do evil, that they just kind of move around. I mean, that's the vibe I got from you.
Yeah, incestuous co-conspirators. You're the prime example of it. So I cover like the national framework. Tina is the prime example of what it looks like at a particular state. In this case, obviously Colorado.
I got to bring this up. This is kind of a little off topic, but we're talking about presidential immunity. I had heard a story from Roger Stone that Lyndon Baines Johnson was about to be arrested. He was being investigated, and the fact that JFK was murdered made him president, gave him immunity. Sounds like very similar to what happened with Biden. I mean, do you want to talk to that?
Well, I mean, vice president at some level also has immunity, and actually has different type of immunity than a president. But a president also has different immunity than a vice president. You got to keep in mind that a vice president has the human being that is titled the vice president actually has two other constitutional roles. So when he's not on Capitol grounds, he's the vice president. When he steps foot in the U.S. Senate, he's known as the president of the Senate, which is a quasi legislative. It's basically a legislative actor, right? So then you can argue that they have immunity on the speech and debate clause now that they're in the Senate chambers. And then when he's in the House on January 6th during a joint session for the certification, he's known as what's known as the presiding officer, which technically, and again, this is ground that hasn't really been adjudicated and argued. So there's some latitude there. But to answer your question, I guess I would say that I'd have to look in it a little bit further. But you definitely do have immunity as a president that you don't have as a vice president. So there may be something there.
I mean, for just a quick little thing for the viewers, there's a book that Roger Stone wrote. I believe it was the man who killed Kennedy. It was about Lyndon Baines Johnson, and seems as though Lyndon Baines Johnson had done a lot of bad things, like 11 murders or something that he was going to be tried for. But let's get back to this topic now. Who wants to take over? Who wants to talk about what's going on?
Well, it's interesting because in my case, I was preserving federal election records, which brings in the supremacy clause. So the state doesn't even have any right to prosecute or persecute me. I was protecting, as my elected official, as my job, to protecting federal election records. So these people are just lawless. They're just out doing whatever they can get away with.
And then the courts are basically supporting their unlawful behavior and almost, right. I wouldn't say legitimizing it, but at least temporarily legitimizing it by putting you through this nonsense.
Well, and that's what happens when you get selections. That's what happens when they start using machines and registrations software to select the people that are prosecuting Trump, prosecuting me, doing all these things. And I want to hear what Ivan has to say, too, when he gets to the point about the Capitol Police, because I think a lot of that ties in to what's going on.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me tee it up. So on the last episode, we went 2014 to 2018, more or less, and 2020. So the censorship industrial complex that was created was then solidified going into 2020 because everybody was, well, not everybody, a lot of people in different states were locked down. So then everybody's forced to look at a screen. And then those screens were manipulated, curated information so that it would change the psyche of an entire nation in the globe to think in a certain manner. What did that result in? That resulted in CommiTube, the Commie, Google, all the big tech social media platforms that were controlled by the very same individuals that were on Crossfire Hurricane that had TDS and that was promoting the Russia scheme. They controlled the levers of information into the entire psyche of the country through the search engines, algorithmic results. So you had this prefabricated TDS that was forced onto the populace through the media and big tech. In addition to that, they forced and tried to manipulate folks into believing that mutilating your own body was healthy. DNA mutilation injections, putting face toilets on your face, sometimes twice, right? Making sure that you medically nose rape yourself on however many times that they tell you to do it, right? Through the PCR tests. Who did that? It was the same FBI agents that curated it.
Every time you say FBI, bro, I don't know, like my heart rate just like skips a beat.
It's a domestic terrorist organization, right? Exactly. And so you can say organizationally, I tell you the names of these scum, right? And if you want to know the address off camera, I'll tell you where these people live. I have the list. And it's going to come to fruition once I become Secretary of Retribution.
I love it. I'm interning there, by the way. I told him I'll bring him coffee. I'm making him breakfast. You know what I mean? I'll Uber him to the Office of Retribution if I have to.
Another thing that Ivan says that just cracks me up. By the way, I've hijacked it. The lamestream media. I love that. He has the lamestream media because this.
The New York slimes, raw sewage, Roy-tards, all those, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Ivan.
Yeah. So I wanted to set that foundational frame of what's going into your brain, and it's being done at scale for the first time in humanity because of the technology we have, right? And so while that's happening, they're telling you that, oh, drop boxes and mail-in ballots, that's legit, right? And anybody that says something to the contrary, what happens to them?
And you already have a
When
weakened mental state because they're hitting you. Propaganda, propaganda, propaganda.
right, and that's why you're starting to see the scalable censorship regime where they now start to manipulate. Oh, you can't talk about drop boxes. Then they censor President Trump. That was the first tweet that they censored when he says like they're vulnerable to corruption, right? And then it started to escalate because that was their plan of attack in order to be able to one of the vectors of attack, if you will, to create a completely illegal and illegitimate election. Then it culminates on January 6th with the illegal certification of an illegal election that you witnessed in Colorado and that all of us witnessed in 39, 40 states. Because, so what you covered, Tina, and a lot of, like Mike Lindell is over here in his booth, and the Sidney Powells of the world, the Rudy Giuliani's, they covered different aspects of retail fraud, wholesale fraud, digital manipulation, software manipulation, the machines, the internet connectivity, going other places and coming back, foreign interference. While all that was going on, I did not discuss that. I strictly focused on the constitutional argument that, hey, member of Congress, going into January 6th, the dozens that I talked to, I said, hey, if you can agree with me, if you can disregard everything that Tina, Mike, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, everybody else is saying, and just hear me out on this, would you agree that state whatever, Arizona, look, this is how they decided to run their election. Now, here's the election law of Arizona. Would you say that there's a gap? Yes. Okay, if you agree with me on that, that means that state ran their election contrary to the federal U.S. Constitution. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, which says that the legislatures retain the right to allocate their presidential and vice presidential electors. That was a simple way. You don't have to prove to a judge that there was software manipulation so that they learn how to code or any of these other things. Now, while all that was happening, I think it was completely true that it was happening. You don't the threshold and the barrier to understand for any lay person. It's like, yeah, it's simple. Here's the rule. It was done in this way. The rule was broken. It's an illegal election. So now you must object. And we started getting people to object. And it got to about 147 on January 5th in the House and growing by the minute. And during that period of time, I said, you know what? You don't have to vote one person, one vote in the House. You can vote by state delegation, which is outlined in the 12th Amendment, that when there's a contested election, no one has enough electoral votes. The 12th Amendment says that there could be a contingent election where the House votes for president by state delegation, and the Senate votes by one person, one vote of the senators present. A quorum is two-thirds of the state represented in the House and two-thirds of the senators in the Senate. The Electoral Count Act doesn't say anything about how you're supposed to vote on the objections. The 12th Amendment doesn't say how you do the objection process. Only the Electoral Count Act does. But it doesn't specify if you vote one person, one vote in the House, one member, one vote, or by state delegation. In the absence of anything on that subject, I said, well, great. To vote for a president, it's a agreement between the state legislatures and the collective and the federal legislature on who becomes president and vice president. So, using that frame, Kevin McCarthy, you are the leader of the party that has 27 Republican states under that framework of vote. And you, Mike Pence, as the presiding officer, are going to have to come to a determination on whether or not you're going to accept Kevin McCarthy's ruling of 27 to 20 to 3, because 3 states were tied up under this framework, or Nancy Pelosi's 222 to 212 on the objection of Arizona. And if you decide with Kevin McCarthy, of which you should because you're the tiebreak person, and you apply that same framework to Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, guess what? It forces a contingent election as envisioned in the 12th Amendment. And then if you vote the same way that you just did, it guarantees a re-election of Trump. So what happens? When I'm articulating that and I explain that that could occur, and then I go on Praying Medic and explain that he asks me the question, what do you think Trump means when he says in his tweet, it's going to be wild on January 6th? I said, well, if I were to put my constitutional lawyer hat on, being a retired Green Beret at that time, still in the reserves, I thought to myself, well, if I was Nancy Pelosi, I would throw out the Senate. I would call on my House Sergeant at Arms, Paul Irving, and tell him to eject the senators from being in the House chambers so that there would not be a joint session and they wouldn't even have the opportunity to conduct what Ivan Raiklin communicated to Kevin McCarthy. Yes, I did. And to Mike Pence's Chief of Staff, Mark Short. Yes, I did. And what actually happened? That's exactly what happened, but in a more aggressive way. But here's where I said,
Check, like, meaning January 6th was their ejection. It was the way to basically avoid the vote.
so by calling on the House Sergeant at Arms, which is the law enforcement leader of the House, if the Speaker says to do something, like she has the authority to do that. So he says, like, physically remove the senators, right? And I said, well, the president could take that as a violation of the 12th Amendment, where the Speaker is violating the natural procession and progression of the joint session from taking place, and he could call on his executive branch assets and deploy them to the Capitol to guarantee that a joint session is going to take place, according to how Ivan Raiklin presented it, which was 27 voting by state delegation, right? But it would have been up to McCarthy to decide to do that with the House body and Pence to go ahead and accept that. So it wasn't a unilateral thing that Pence could do. It had to be the House body as in the collective and then Pence to acquiesce to it. It's the only constitutional argument that has withstood the test of time, and that's why I've been dead named, because if my name ID gets up there and this explanation gets out there, the entire J6 narrative completely falls.
Dead name, what do you mean? Like the censorship and that sort of thing?
Physical and digital censorship, and I'm not allowed on any of the major platforms. Any.
Wow.
Zero.
Wow.
You name the big name person related to January 6th and all that, they won't even talk to me.
Could you tell me what platforms? You want to name them? Like
Faux news, because Paul Ryan was in on it, and I know, and I have the receipts. I guess we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give him a chance. The guy that I was texting earlier.
Oh, got it. Yeah. All right. We might have an exclusive very soon.
In the meantime, in the states, and that's where I was focused on, you've got the Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold, doing all the executive actions, not even going through the legislature, right? I mean, but on the COVID excuse, implementing emergency legislation, which should be left to the legislators, just to be able to keep the crime going.
They circumvented the Constitution in so many ways. First Amendment, Fourth, Fifth Amendment, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, Article 1, Section 4 on the federal House member elections, etc. But those are like separate 1 hour to 2 hour discussions we're not going to do right now. So January 6th. So instead of it happening, when I was asked that question, what do you mean by it's going to get spicy? Well, think about it, right? If Pelosi throws out the Senate, stops the joint session, the president calls on the military to say, you know what? No, the joint session will take place, honey bun. That creates a nice little constitutional, physical standoff, right?
I gotta ask this question. I mean, did Trump make a strategic mistake in having all the people show up to January 6th in Washington, D.C., as opposed to just let it go on and let the vote happen so they wouldn't have an excuse to stop that? Because what you're saying seems to have been more likely if there wasn't a million people in Washington, D.C.
No, because had there not been any people in D.C. that day, there's no way that the Congress would have been in a position to feel the necessary pressure to actually go along with my recommended one state, one vote objection. They would have been like, oh, cool, we're just going to...
So false flag was their only option.
Their only option. So now understanding what I had presented, Pelosi knowing that, because I was retweeted by Trump like 3 times, 5 times. And so I'm nobody, but when you're retweeted by a president with 80-something million followers, Nancy Pelosi and her staff knows what's going on. Couple that with the wargaming that was done in the summer with Jamie Raskin spearheading it on all the different variations that could take place on January 6th. The one thing that they did not plan for, and this is related to, I read Jamie Raskin's book, right? The one thing that they did not contemplate was my argument, which was you vote by state delegation on the objections to the states. So when that topic of discussion hit that crescendo on January 5th, that's when I think the Fedsurrection planning and execution came into place.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a overnight planning. So that's where that leaves a lot of room for error when you're just haphazardly trying to plan something that's significant overnight, basically.
Absolutely. Now, I could be wrong on the.
And Capitol Police Chief Manger's wife ran for office in the exact same district.
We're getting notes. We're getting notes here. We got this wonderful
No,
lady.
we're not there yet.
Why don't
We're
you
not
pop in
there
here, like,
yet.
kind of.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So, no, I was saying the Capitol Police Chief, Thomas Manger, his wife ran for office in the exact same county and district that Raskin is from. They're all in together.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's
they're
just this big
neighbors. They're neighbors.
incestuous criminal syndicate of scumbags. That's
So Key West Jess is absolutely right, and she's been helping me with this. She's part of the team of marauders investigating and getting all the dots connected and the receipts put together.
We're all sure.
So,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
but so they were basically arguing what the legal things would be, how they would object, how would they basically object out the elections. But they're like, well, since they own the House, they're not going to be able to pass the objections, right? Because 222 Democrats versus 212. But what they didn't think about was what I presented, the state delegation vote, right? And that's when it was like, whoa. They thought of everything else except for what I presented. And so what did they have to do? It probably went something like this. Holy crap. We have to stop the momentum of enough Republicans to agree with the objections because it's going to reelect Trump. And if that happens, they're all toast. Because I'm probably going to be in the administration at that point, right? I was actually on the final stages of vetting to take on an appointed position.
Wow.
But
So let's create some chaos and confuse the issue.
But I'm going to explain it to you. The individuals involved in that, okay? So Clay Higgins, he was on Laura Logan, and he's been on Tucker Carlson. They talked about, everyone talks about feds. Just like when we talked about how the conversation was, it's the machines, it's the software, it's the foreign interference, it's, right? While that's all true, that's not the root problem that can be explained and understood by the public. What I explain is something that you can immediately be like, oh, wait, it violates the Constitution, boom, boom.
Yeah, it's illegal.
Similar to that, January 6th, the focus of everybody, except for literally, I hate, it sounds arrogant, but I've studied this topic for tens of thousands of hours the last 3 years. When you look at title as an attorney, so I look at the problem of January 6th from the perspective of an attorney in the legal frame and the decision-making power of that day, who was involved, and then the tactical component as a retired Green Beret commander on how would I conduct something to make it successful. So, I don't want this to go too long, but because I can go so long on this.
You know.
All right, so this is my top line analytic assessment. January 6th was the intentional, facilitated, deliberate intrusion into the Capitol led by the Capitol Police Board's overlords, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, in order to stop the re-election of Trump. This is who was involved. The Speaker of the House is technically the leader of the joint session, the physical area of it, until the presiding officer walks in. So when Nancy Pelosi gavels in and says, with her beautiful mask, the face toilet, right? that Brian Otten convinced her and everyone else to put on because it's safe and effective, right? So that he can also make money with his family on the sale of that and all the other products. She says, at the advice of the attending physician and the sergeants at arms, meaning her sergeant at arms, Paul Irving, and Mitch McConnell's sergeant at arms, Michael Stenger. And with the agreement of leadership, meaning Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Kevin McCarthy, and herself, Nancy Pelosi, are only going to allow 11 members of each party from each side of the Congress to be present on the House floor during the joint session. Meaning, 11 hand-picked individuals by Pelosi will be there on the objection discussion. 11 hand-picked individuals by Kevin McCarthy, half of which were against objecting, handpicked by McCarthy, and then 11 handpicked senators by McConnell, 11 handpicked senators by Schumer could participate in the joint session. Didn't I just say that the 12th Amendment requires 2/3 of the senators to be present?
So they reduced the numbers so they can't even. Yeah. Wow.
No quorum. The certification was illegal. On top of that, as soon as Paul Gosar stood up and Congressman Paul Gosar and Congressman Ted Cruz stood up to do their objection, Mike Pence sighs in dismay and disgust. Oof, looks like we're going to have to execute the Fedsurrection. At that exact time, the outer breach one happens.
People even came over, wasn't it?
Could you say that again?
Was that before?
Still speaking at the ellipse.
Trump was still speaking. Okay. Okay.
That timing. They had to do the timing.
The outer breach happened. But here, dude, I don't know how much detail you want me to go. At 12,
we're on blood money, by the way. It's all about.
At 12:30, a recon element is placed at Freedom Circle in the northwest portion leading from Pennsylvania Avenue into the Capitol. There's the first fence line. That first fence line does not have any wording on it saying that it is a restricted zone. There's an individual standing there 30 minutes just standing there. The only thing I can come up with to explain why he's standing there, he is definitely a recon element to observe and advise what's going on. Okay? I've seen the video footage. Because I've gone in there 3 or 4 days to look at the terminals of the CCTV holdings of the U.S. Capitol Police. Breach occurs with 2 other people into the next outer breach, which has restricted zone area. What do they do then? The recon element. They pull the fence. So, if you are the one inciting the breach and you're pushing it in, you are now considered in restricted zone and you're violating trespass, right? But if you pull it, you're not trespassing, but everybody else that comes in is.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
Isn't that genius?
Evil.
So, the people that did the outer breach, nowhere to be seen. No violation. FBI's not doing anything, right? But you have Clay Higgins talking about the FBI. You got Julie Kelly talking about the FBI and the DOJ. You got, name some bigger influencers. What do they talk about? It's all about DOJ, FBI, right? Well, guess what? FBI does not have jurisdictional authority over the Capitol grounds. The DOJ does not have jurisdiction over the Capitol grounds. The DHS does not. DC Metropolitan Police has concurrent jurisdiction with the U.S. Capitol Police on any transgression occurring in the Capitol grounds. Inside of the building, on the House side, inside of the office buildings on the House side, the U.S. Capitol Police has jurisdiction with the House Sergeant at Arms. On the Senate side, the U.S. Capitol Police has jurisdiction with the Senate Sergeant at Arms. So, the 1,200 J6 defendants, almost all of them are what? They went in. Who started the rap sheet, the charge sheet on them? It wasn't the FBI. It wasn't the DHS. It wasn't the U.S. Attorney's Office. It wasn't the DOJ. It wasn't the courts. It wasn't the jury pool. The chief of the U.S. Capitol Police has to sign off on every criminal referral before it goes over to the DOJ. The first layer of the onion is the U.S. Capitol Police chief. And then he's advised by the general counsel, the lawyer. And the information and intel that they get in order to put together the criminal package on the J6 defendant comes from the head of the Intel and Interagency Coordination Division. So then the marauder asks himself, let's find out who these individuals are and peel the onion some more. What are their names? What's their background? What's their relationships? Who appointed them? What loyalties do they have and to whom? You want the answers to all that?
I mean, why are you teasing? Why are you even teasing? Like you're like what? And by the way, you're self-interviewing impeccable as always. I mean, I might go get a coffee and a sandwich right now.
Can you grab me one
Like,
too?
really, seriously, like,
But I need you to understand this. I always say this. I don't want followers. I don't need followers. I'm trying to educate leaders to be able to explain it to your network in a way that's palatable, right? So, who was the head of Intel and Interagency Coordination Division on January 6th? Yogananda Pittman. And guess what? When you look at her background and you talk to somebody like Tarek Johnson, former U.S. Capitol Police officer, whistleblower, and he says, yeah, Yogananda Pittman's real close with the Congressional Black Caucus. Translation, for those that don't know, very infested with the Democrat Party. And then the other thing Tarek Johnson likes to say is she was promoted very quickly 4 or 5 times, faster than anyone I can think of.
Wow. Again, putting these people in positions of power to be able to do their current
Wonder
criminal
why.
scumbag.
That's something to ask her. Next, January 6th, according to Tarek Johnson, he says it was a internal coup, meaning Yogananda Pittman sat on intel that she did not provide the operational chain. Chad Thomas, who headed the operations side, and the chief of Capitol Police at the time, Chief Stephen Son. Why did she sit on it? Because Stephen Son, the chief of Capitol Police, went to Pelosi and her sergeant at arms. Hey, on 6 occasions from January 3rd to the 6th, can you please authorize external support so we can defend the Capitol? A lot of chatter out there, and just I'd be more comfortable to make sure that we can control the Capitol. Paul Irving, Pelosi's sergeant at arms, responds with, due to optics, can't have that.
Or anybody else. They wanted complete control.
Which begs the question, why did the D.C. mayor, Muriel Bowser, also use the term due to optics? She's not going to request the National Guard. Why did General Milley use the term due to optics? Why did Secretary of the Army Ryan McCarthy use the term due to optics? Isn't that
it's like when you
synchronized?
Yeah, you watch the mainstream media, those videos where it's like 50 screens and every mainstream media outlet is literally repeating the same sentence. It seems like they got a memo. This is what they're supposed to say. Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking too. So due to optics, the chief of Capitol Police, Stephen Son, is denied additional protection of the Capitol. Translation, that means the U.S. Capitol Police and the sergeants at arms control what goes on.
So they didn't want to bring.
completely.
So they didn't want to bring the National Guard in because now you're giving jurisdiction to National Guard. That means that all this scumbaggery that you're wanting to do now goes away. Basically.
Yeah, you'll kind of recognize it, and you'll report on it. Or you will stop the breach from happening. If you don't allow the breach to happen, the objections take place, and there's a Trump re-election. And so what happens? Yogananda Pittman or someone coordinates, let's just say Nancy Pelosi or her designee, her son in law, is seen at the W Hotel on January 5th with John Sullivan, the black kid, Antifa BLM, that was heading up the inner breach team. And then John Sullivan is later that evening seen with Ray Epps, standing like this, as Ray Epps is recruiting folks. Tomorrow we attack the Capitol. We go into the Capitol. At the same time that's going on in the evening of the 5th, was it Yogananda Pittman or one of her surrogates? Or maybe Paul Irving, the House Sergeant at Arms? Or maybe even the FBI? Because this, well, not FBI, somebody in the D.C. Mayor's office or D.C. Metro Police Chief, Conti, did they tell someone to go ahead and place 2 fake bombs at the DNC and the RNC? Have I talked to the head of security at the RNC about this?
Have you?
I have. And the first public statement article,
I'm just like, I could just sit here, bro. Like,
have I worked sources within U.S. Capitol Police? I have. Now, what the reason? This is the first time I'm saying this publicly that I have talked to the head of RNC Security.
Exclusive on America Happens.
And the reason why I'm saying it publicly now is because yesterday he went and actually talked to the Daily Wire publicly for his first interview. His name, I will disclose now, because it's now disclosed publicly, is Ken Capolino. And when you read that article and you ask him some more questions, his perspective of it, he's a former U.S. Capitol Police SWAT guy, then became a security contract guy at the RNC and then the director of the RNC security. When he saw that, he's like, this is a total distraction diversion, and it looks like an inert device. But he still calls it in and evacuates the RNC. Why is this important? It's because the RNC was going to be hosting a meeting to discuss exactly the manner in which they were going to do the objections. Was it going to be one person, one vote, or by delegation?
Wow. Wow. So they put a fake bomb threat to basically stop that from happening. Bro, that is just unbelievable. I mean, these are like wholesale criminals. I mean, these are all like treasonous.
Operation Trump's not getting in.
Unbelievable, dude.
I just see the criminality in everything they do. I mean, even with my case.
And she's the one being persecuted, by the way. Like he just named like dozens and dozens of the worst criminals, and you're the one being persecuted because you tried to catch and stuff.
Well, and it's interesting because we see this happening state by state, county by county. I mean, these people that money, power, and position. Them, they're criminals. That's all I can say about it. But so the Capitol Police and all their these special ops, and and I'm sure there's people like that walk.
Capitol Police, by the way,
around here, right? I mean, infiltrating. They've infiltrated, and there's no Democrat, Republican. It's just they're criminals. Go ahead.
Wings of the same bird.
My analysis. Let me start. I should have started with this. The reason why I'm very confident I start off with my assessment. I'm almost certain with the highest level of confidence that it was an intentional, deliberate breach of the Capitol to stop the objections for a re-election. Okay? The reason why I have the highest level of confidence in this is I've spoken to Tarek Johnson on many occasions. I've spoken to Chief Sund, the former Capitol Police Chief. I have other sources within Capitol Police. I have read every single book that has been written by every witness that has written the book or has been related to any of the J6 committee cover-ups.
Wow.
Both sides of the aisle, whether it's former acting secretary Chris Miller. I've talked to him. Every single major player I've talked to on this subject. The J6 committee hasn't talked to the people that I've talked to, but yet I've also consumed everything that the J6 committee has published, right? The RNC head of security, like I talked about. So the key, I guess, sources of info to help me form this RNC Security, U.S. Capitol Police Chief, Tarek Johnson, the books, Liz Cheney's book, Jamie Raskin's book, Eric Swalwell, Adam Schiff, all of them that were involved in then the cover-up part, which we're going to get to.
Yeah.
So I get more and more confidence in this. And then when you read Title 2 of the United States Code, Chapter 29, it's the congressional authorization for the U.S. Capitol Police, their jurisdiction, their authorities, their mission, and I may or may not have read the entire Capitol Police policies and procedures.
I love that. I may or may not have.
I always keep it lawful, everything I do.
Is this like, I'm curious, you're an attorney, right?
I am.
Okay, so you're basically, this is the gray area you're leaving, so you won't implicate yourself? Is that what it is? I'm just curious.
As I like to say, I may or may not have seen, observed the binder.
May or may not remember that. May or may not. We'll save you from a lot.
And may or may not have glanced at every single page. And may or may not have studied every word, sentence, letter. Or not.
Or not.
I don't know.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I deny any knowledge of any of this.
I love this new world.
And may or may not have looked at every single promotion list. And may or may not have followed Dania Newell's promotions. And I haven't introduced her name, but let's just say Dania Newell is in the mix. Julie Farnham is in the mix. Yogananda Pittman is in the mix. Michael Bird, the guy that murdered Ashley Babbitt, is in the mix. Now,
Didn't he?
he's a captain now. He got promoted. So speaking of promotion,
Reward for murder.
Reward?
I mean, at the least, the guy was loose trigger finger, and that's the kind of person you promote, the loose trigger fag that doesn't know how to restrain himself.
yeah. So speaking of promotions, guess who got promoted from Assistant Capitol Police Chief for Intel Interagency Coordination to become the Capitol Police Chief on January 8th, 2 days later? Yogananda Pittman, of course. She's the one that held the intel so that Sun couldn't protect the Capitol. And then maybe she was involved in coordinating. Oh, wait. Her title was head of intel, and so she kept intel and didn't provide it to protect the Capitol. And she also was head of interagency coordination.
Wow.
Wait. When you look at the policies and procedures manual, I would guess, if, I don't know, maybe someone else saw it. I don't know if I have.
May or may not.
They're leaving out their boss.
Interagency coordination to me means, just like as a lay person with 25 years experience in the intel community or so, right? Interagency to me means DC Metropolitan Police, FBI, DHS, RNC Security, DNC Security, but yet there was no coordination on the RNC Security side of things. Was there at the DNC? Was there interagency coordination between Yogi Pittman and FBI? Those that were identified by Clay Higgins, for example? Or those identified by others? Or, what's his name? He's been helping you out with the case in Colorado.
Trennis Evans.
What about Trennis Evans? Remember he identified DHS folks at the Capitol? So in order for any of those executive branch or DC Metro Police agents, assets, surrogates, CHSs to be on the Capitol grounds legally, it has to come from an authority from the Capitol Police. You would think that the person in charge of that coordination is the head of Intel and Interagency Coordination, Pittman. So is it possible that Pittman coordinated that or someone above her? Like the House Sergeant at Arms, Paul Irving, because he was listening to what Nancy Pelosi was directing. And is it possible maybe it wasn't just Nancy Pelosi coordinating that, because it may have been her documentarian that was standing next to her the whole day. Her daughter Alexandra, who was coordinating from inside with her husband, who was on the outside as he was taking selfies with funny hat wearing barrel chested freedom fighter with the funny hat. What's his name? Chansley.
Shaman. I love it.
Yeah.
And
So you,
Paul Irving was also House Sergeant at Arms for who else?
we're getting there next. Dude, she's getting
We got. Like people are so excited. There's like, you know what I mean? Like.
We got to wrap it up.
So we always knew this was going to be a multi-part series. You said we said a two-part. I think this is going to be a four-parter. I love it, by the way. I love it. I mean, we'll do a marathon. I don't care. But let's wrap this episode up, and then
I want to have a good, clean break before we wrap it up. So, it was 5 hours. It was 5.
Go on my website and see the
you guys
other
did
part.
A 5-hour episode.
We did a
Oh,
5-hour
wow.
episode. Yeah, I just went and changed shirts.
Back to back, though. So, Paul Irving, the House Sergeant at Arms for Nancy Pelosi, had been the Sergeant at Arms for Paul Ryan before that, who's on the executive board of Faux News. Now you see why he won't have me? And then John Boehner before that. By the way, John Boehner and Paul Ryan were out there campaigning for Liz Cheney.
Can I insert this one part? A lot of people are not familiar with why Faux News settled with a certain election vendor. They never put it together. It's like they're both majorly owned by BlackRock. So people, and oh no, they had too much evidence, so Dominion just, Fox News just backed off. No, you got to look a little deeper than that.
Yeah, if I could say something about this, like they didn't have evidence, and what they did really by doing that is they just like did this what I call Hollywood accounting. I grew up in Hollywood, where they'll just take it from essentially they'll make it look like Fox News is paying it, it'll circle back in, they'll get the money back as if nothing happened, but then the public was left with the impression that Fox was so scared that they had to lay it down. No, it's a propaganda tool to make it seem that way.
And
Some of these news people, I'm saying, why aren't you saying this stuff? Right? I mean, even the good news.
Yeah, the good news. Yeah,
is not saying.
That's what bothers me, honestly. Our little company here, it's like some of the stuff that we do. Some of these outlets don't even touch. And I'm not talking about Faux News, by the way. I'm talking about the ones that are supposed to come.
That's right, and on my show too. I'll do
the devil's in the details. So, if you were to take a look at the agreement between Faux and Deviant voting systems, which I may or may not have seen.
You make it fun. You actually make this process of going after scumbags so much fun.
Yeah,
Please accept my internship application.
Security, I do. People have seen the angels around me, so I'm good. Let's go.
So, I mean, let's just hypothetically say that I didn't see it, but let's just kind of contemplate what may be in there. Would there be some communications of saying, hey, we're going to transfer over $787 million to you. You must remove Tucker. And that is considered an investment so that you get new machines, and we get to pick and choose what the outcome of those machines will be.
And Fox News signed.
So Faux News, possibly, I don't know. I haven't seen the
may or may not
seen the agreement. Here's a $787 million bribe, maybe, for deviant voting systems to create an outcome of Faux News' choosing. Does that sound like an investment?
This is worse. This is worse than Soviet crap. This is worse than Soviet crap because
you may not have seen it.
Yeah. But let's pretend you have, or let's pretend this is a fact. But I mean, this is worse than Soviet Union crap because we're left with this impression that it is not that. At least the Soviets know what they're getting into. They're not lied to about what their system is. We're being lied to about what our system is, and they're literally stealing our constitution right from under our feet.
Hey, I'm speculating. Don't take that as fact. I'm just speculating.
This is our break. Is this our break? I see we're getting waved. Oh, you got another thing?
What time is it?
It's time because it's
Okay,
gonna take
It'll take 20 minutes to get there.
Okay.
So, U.S. Cap, you took me on that excursion ride, which is important to understand. I'm going to end it with this. If you're a J6 defendant, If you're a January 6th attorney, when I say January 6th defendant, that's 1,200 people, to include Donald Trump, to include every single defendant in the Fannie Willis stuff down in Georgia. Every single person, to you jump the gun, to include the Tina Peters of the world. Everything related to the criminalization of those that are exposing the Fedsurrection, illegally certified, illegally conducted election are being weaponized against. And guess where that weaponization started? The Capitol Police Board works for the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader. The Capitol Police Chief controls all video and all documents related to criminalizing people via a criminal referral process. That's for the people that walked onto the Capitol grounds. For those that didn't, then they try to loop everyone else in through a seditious co-conspiracy role with those that were on the Capitol grounds. And for those that didn't conduct any one of those, evidence is created, concocted, manipulated, coerced, and curated, just like the censorship industrial complex did at a grand scale. It is being done by three main individuals. The current Capitol Police Chief, Thomas Manger. Prior to him, it was Pittman. So since July 23rd of 2021, it was Manger, who was appointed by Pelosi and Schumer's sergeants at arms. Manger's wife, as mentioned before, is a Democrat shill in Jamie Raskin's district, a Democrat in Maryland, just up the road from where we're at. Number two, the General Counsel of the Capitol Police is the senior most Capitol Police officer or Capitol Police Board member that was there before January 6th, on January 6th, after January 6th, and is still there. His signature is on every single document that brought in manipulated CCTV footage, coerced testimony from Capitol Police. That's a lie. And if they didn't lie and say that they were threatened, they would be fired. And if they kept quiet because they also had to sign an NDA. So the video that only included what looked like incriminating evidence, coupled with the lied testimony, was then sent over to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Number two, during the period of time under which there was the J6 cover-up committee, that general counsel was communicating and coordinating with the staff director of Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson's, Nancy Pelosi's J6 cover-up committee, also known as Mike Pence's cover-up committee. Why? Guess who it was? David Buckley. David Buckley was one of the 51 that said that the Biden laptop, and David Buckley was the Inspector General for CIA Director John Brennan. He was placed there to do exactly what needed to be done. Create evidence, show it to the public, to poison the jury pool in D.C. and the judges and the rest of the world that this was an insurrection in order to cover up the Fedsurrection.
Wow. And so, theoretically speaking, all these trials in New York, this is just a continuation of the same J6. Essentially, what's happened to Trump.
All that, everything that they put together with the J6 committee report and the criminal referrals that they sent over to Jack Smith, it all starts with the names I just mentioned.
And fraud is there's no statute of limitations on fraud. So if the fraud is exposed on a legal level, everything should go away, right? All the persecution, all these trials in New York, that all goes away, doesn't it? Because it's based on fraud.
Based on jurisdiction, I can't say that. I can't agree with your statement that there's no statute of limitations on that. You got to look at the statute. You got to look at the different jurisdictions.
Doesn't statute of limitations for fraud begin when you discover the fraud, when you confirm the fraud? Hence, the time starts ticking when it's confirmed, right?
Yeah. In most instances, yes. So, having said that, the reason why I haven't taken a single individual January 6th case or helped directly with Tina Peters, or which I would love to, I don't have the bandwidth, because if other people were exposing what I'm exposing right now in this level of granular detail,
then you would do it.
I could do it.
But there's other attorneys that could handle it. What you're doing is
I don't have the bandwidth because no one else is covering this aspect. And I believe that this is the golden key solution to every single January 6th defendant. Because once you prove that the evidence provided to the courts, to the jury pool, to the judges, to the DOJ, even if the DOJ wasn't complicit and didn't have TDS, the evidence that the U.S. Capitol Police sent over to them to go ahead and prosecute a J6 defendant is still manipulated, fraudulent, curated.
And now, just to finish up for the next show, is going to be about the AI, what they're doing with that.
Awesome.
Right?
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Make sure you show up for part 3.